Benefactor underwriting for this broadcast has been provided by a grant from Republic Bank. The power of red is back. Major underwriting support for this broadcast has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Customers Bank, Collins Building Services, Marks Paneth. Additional underwriting support has been provided by grants from AmTrust Title, Bank of America, Capital One Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Catsimatidis Red Apple Group, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Ocean First Bank, RPW Group, TD Bank, the One Stop Property Group, and these friends.
Oh, Crystal Apple, you seem to be getting brighter. What's it, what, why is the condo, co-op, and townhouse market doing well? Or as my guest will say, certain parts are doing well and certain parts aren't. But as I return to the studio after a 20-month hiatus, I'm fortunate, with the help of my executive producer, Steve Kliegerman, to produce today a show called What's Happening in the Residential Condo Market, Co-op Market, and Townhouse Market. My guests today include Greg Heym, the Executive Vice President and Chief Economist at Brown Harris Stevens. As I said, Mr. Stephen Kliegerman, who is the President of Brown Harris Stevens Development Marketing. And last but not least, you can't do a show on the city with luxury developments without one of the best luxury developers over here. I have Miki Naftali, Chairman and CEO of the Naftali Group. So you're the economist. You're the intelligent one amongst us over here. Tell us what's going on. What do you see?
Well, I think it's a combination. That we lagged the rest of the country because we were hit harder by COVID. There was a flight from density. A lot of people went down south or went to the suburbs. And you saw what happened when the country reopened towards the end of June. Well, most of it anyway. There was an explosion of home sales. The supply of existing home for sales fell under 2 months. You know, we had a lumber shortage. We couldn't build new houses fast enough. Prices rose because the demand was so strong and rates were favorable. We had an extra advantage. We were delayed in opening, but once things started to get going this spring, really get going, we had an economy that had already recovered, not so much in New York City, but around the US. We had a stock market that was at records. A decade ago, after Lehman Brothers, the stock market was down 40%, and didn't come back right away. We were fortunate enough to have that. We had the pent-up demand, because remember, people couldn't go and show apartments till the end of June of 2020. People were buying stuff, new developments, maybe they used to that, but resale not so much. And look, we had something you wouldn't normally want to have. We had a lot of inventory, which was actually a good thing, I think, because you saw the run-ups in parts of Florida and Connecticut, Long Island, and they ran out of homes to sell, and prices priced a lot of people out, or opportunities were shut out. Look what happened in areas like Westchester. The Hamptons couldn't have been hotter. So being that we had enough apartments for sale, prices didn't rise significantly. You expect there to be an adjustment. Usually that takes time. But when you have a lot of inventory, sellers are a lot more open to cutting prices than when the market is doing better and the economy was doing better. And I think that was a price adjustment we needed for several years too. So having the inventory, buyers seeing an opportunity, I think they learned their lesson after Lehman Brothers, that when stuff is 25% cheaper, I'm not saying that was the case this time, but when things are on sale, you buy it then. You have vision. You take a long-term approach.
So my question, are we on sale today? Is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market?
That's a really good question. And the answer is yes. It is both. It's a buyer's market and a seller's market, depending on where the property is located. If it's a new development or a resale, if it needs work or not. There are areas of the city, Miki will tell you, that are doing really well with great product. At 200 Amsterdam, one of our projects, our premier project on the Upper West Side, we're selling very well and we're holding our pricing. We have another project on the Upper East Side, kind of far east by First Avenue. There we have to negotiate more because it's a secondary location, but it's still a good location. We have many projects that are holding pricing. I'd say in general, negotiability is between 4 and 7%. But there are projects such as Miki's where there's zero negotiability. Projects such as 200 Amsterdam that are zero negotiability. But there are also a few projects that have been lingering on the market since 2015-16 and are still in the market today. So the answer is there's all different types of product and all different types of markets depending on location, depending on price point, and depending on who your buyer audience is.
So let's go to you. Madison Avenue hadn't had new developments to speak of in probably 20 years, okay? Nothing really over there.
Sure, more.
Okay, at least 20, 25 years. And all of a sudden, you come around and you have some projects.
Right.
Let's talk about the projects. Let's also talk about who the buyers are.
Right.
Okay, that's a question, you know. Do we have domestic buyers? Do we have New Yorkers? Or do we have international buyers?
So, you know, that's what we go always after, trying to find the opportunities and trying to find prime locations with either no inventory or very, very low inventory. And we obviously identified that on the prime Upper East Side, there was basically no inventory. So but try even to buy a site. There's nothing like that to buy a site on Madison Avenue. Fifth Avenue, you can't do anything. Park Avenue, there is nothing. So Madison Avenue, because there are certain people that the only place they want to live is between Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue, and between the high 60s and maybe the high 80s. That's it. So what can you do? Either you buy into an old core building and you go through 3-4 summers to try to renovate, and you're still left with small windows, old risers, old elevators, no amenity in the building.
And tough co-op boards.
And tough co-op. And you need to open your entire financial world, right? So obviously it was an opportunity. It took us very long time. The first assemblage that we put on Madison Avenue and 79th Street, you know, it took like 11 transactions, 4 sellers, but then we had to move tenants, buy tenants out and things like that. Eventually, we put together a beautiful building. We hired one of the 2 best architects for this part of town, Peter Penoyer. He's doing a lot of the big renovations on 5th Park Avenue and the townhouses and whatever. And we put together a fantastic project. We happen also to brand it after my father that died many years ago. We call it the Benson, the Ben of, Ben in Hebrew is his son. Exactly, and his name was Benjamin. So in any event, and during the summer of last year, we got many requests to get information about the project. So I decided to open the sales office right after Labor Day of last year. And it was just overwhelming. And in less than 5 months, we sold out. No negotiation, raised the price, but beautiful product, really, really beautiful product that there is nothing else to compete with. And this is in the middle of COVID, unbelievable. So that's the first one. Then, while we were doing that, actually before that, we signed a contract with Vonedo to buy the corner of Madison Avenue and 86th Street, 1165. We closed the deal, started to design the project. Again, fantastic, very small, boutique, private, almost like a private club. That's what we designed. This time, we hired Bob Stern to design the project. The 2 best architects on this beautiful part of town. Designed the project. Every unit has anywhere between 13 to 14 foot ceiling, clear, inside. So imagine those fantastic Parisian type of apartments. You can't get something like that on the prime Upper East Side with fantastic amenities. I opened the sales office a week ago. A week ago. I have already half of the units under contract, full price, and I already raised the price. What does it tell us? It tells us that, of course, people made a lot of money in the last year and a half. In addition to that, really good product in a really, really good location will sell at a premium price. But we still see pockets, in my opinion, of mediocre type of product in maybe locations that are not great, that is not moving that fast. And I think it's a very healthy market. That's why we have buyer's market and seller's market, depends what you sell.
Now, who's buying? Let's talk about yours and then...
Sure. So those are 2 out of 3 Upper East Side projects that I'm selling right now. In those 3 together, I have $1 billion inventory. Out of the $1 billion inventory that I started to sell in September of last year, I already have half of it under contract. I think it's amazing. Who is buying? Only US buyers. The 2 on Madison, mainly New Yorkers. We have a couple of West Coast buyers, but it's not like their 3rd or 4th apartment. Those buyers are spending half of their time in New York. Okay, so they need a serious, apartment in
Right,
New
and
York City.
the other people have kids going to school in the Upper East Side, private school and everything.
Correct.
And they want to be in that neighborhood.
So that's on my 3rd project, which is 200 East 83rd Street. That's a much bigger project, much taller. Over there, we see some buyers that are buying either for their kids or parents that are helping their kids to start their life with either they're married or they have small children and they're helping them to start. But no foreign buyers.
Let's talk about the co-op market. What's happening in that area?
Well, Greg will tell you about the co-op market, but before we go there, I just want to touch on what Miki was saying about the buyers. So the buyers, I agree, at the high end of the market, the buyers are almost completely local or certainly U.S. We are seeing a good number of West Coasters who want to have a second home, but a real home, as Miki said. We see a lot of buyers coming from the medical field, particularly doctors. There's been a huge influx from the medical field in Manhattan over the last year. The Chinese buyers starting to come back in the $1 to $3 million price point for new development condos in good locations. They won't buy secondary locations. They really want to be, 3rd Avenue or West. They don't really want to go over to 2nd or 1st Avenue unless it's on the water and has great views. I agree, a lot of parents buying for or with their adult children. A lot of wealth was created over the last 18 months, and a lot of that wealth is being spent here in New York. And interesting enough, a lot of the buyers we're seeing coming from the West Coast, unfortunately, are coming because of the fires, because of the smoke. They literally being smoked out.
They're not coming because of the taxes, because we don't have a better tax
This is
system.
true. No, they're coming for health reasons. They're relocating their jobs because of the fires and the environmental issues that are happening all along the West Coast. It's an interesting phenomenon, but we've seen enough of it to see a trend.
Co-ops.
Co-ops. Well, obviously there's challenges. You talked about co-op boards before, and one of the things we're hearing more and more of is a lot of co-op boards will try to protect value in their building by rejecting buyers who are paying what they think are, low prices. I think we've seen a big rebound, especially in the last 6 months or so, on the luxury co-op side because the value is there.
Right.
If you're talking about getting the biggest apartment for the least amount of money, co-ops, again, we know about underlying mortgages and rules and things like that. The old adage used to be 15 to 25%.
Are any of the co-op
discounted.
boards becoming more lenient? I go to the Harmony Club on 60th Street off Madison, okay? Or what we should say 520 Park Avenue building over there. And there's one doctor who works out, I said to him, and he lives like at 480 Park Avenue. I said, who's the tenants? He says, we are basically an assisted living building. Okay, that's the average age is over 85, and it's a different thing.
Yeah.
But they can't get their money out of it because the boards are so crazy.
Yeah.
I think they've also, some boards have tried to adapt, knowing that with all these luxury condos that are being built that have these spectacular amenities, you know, they have to adjust where they can. But it's not as simple as they might think. It's like, you can't just say, oh, we'll put a gym in, we'll make a nice roof. That's only a small part of it, yeah. And I think some of them are allowing buying in LLCs now. That's something that they never would have allowed, more lenient rental rules. But, you know, just like every development isn't right for every buyer, you know, some developments attract New Yorkers, some, you know, are really designed for the foreign buyer. I think the same thing. Co-op is a type of product that attracts people that, you know, really want to know who their neighbors are, don't want a lot of renters coming in and out.
And most of the co-ops are Manhattan, New York City residents, or are you seeing what you were talking before, the Chinese?
They allow Terra owners for sure. I mean, most co-ops do that. I mean, we seem to focus on the most restrictive ones, like the all-cash buildings, where you have to have the world's greatest financial statements to get in. But the average co-op isn't like that. And, you know, people have to remember that in Manhattan, it's still the largest group of owned property, residential property, is still co-ops. They had a big head start on condos, obviously.
And let's talk about townhouses, and I also want Miki to talk about townhouses. What's happening with the townhouses?
Townhouses aren't seeing the same, you know, craziness that co-ops and condos have. You know, and the funny thing is in Manhattan, there's only about 2,000 single-family townhouses in the whole borough. So you'd think they'd be very much in demand. But people that wanted large amounts of space can find that in new developments. They don't have to worry about doing work to the outside of the building like you have to do with a townhouse. You have a staff in the building. You don't have to staff your townhouse. But again, it's right for some people. If you want multi-floor living, then yeah, you're going to find that.
Who's buying the townhouses today? Are we younger families who have children around?
It depends on the area. Obviously, a lot of people that left Manhattan, we found out, went to the outer boroughs. And obviously, parts of Brooklyn, particularly Brownstone, Brooklyn, did very well. Queens, you know, a little more space, a little more privacy, you know, not coming in contact with as many people. Townhouses flew off the shelf. Now that slowed a bit. And you don't expect that pace to continue forever, but it is families. And it's people that don't want to be in a high-rise building where they have to ride elevators and come across people in the lobby. I mean, COVID's already been here for a year and a half. I think a lot of people are not just making panicked short-term decisions, but thinking that, you know, this could be something and I might be more comfortable in this style of house.
Yeah, I think the townhouse buyer is definitely a more private individual. They don't want staff. They don't want a door staff. They don't want a lobby staff. They don't want to show their financials. And you know, they have a different aspect and viewpoint on their life. And they want to be in a more secluded situation. They also probably want a rear yard or, you know, some outdoor space. You know, we see some also, they're moving their businesses into their townhouse, like into the parlor floor or ground floor of the building, so they can basically live, work as well. And a lot of the townhouses are situated around some of the better schools as well. So I think, you know, your point about is it families with children? I think yes, it's families with children who literally want to be able to easily commute to their child's school.
Nick?
For me, I'm really focusing on the really high end of the market. So in most of my projects, we don't have the long corridors. We don't have a lot of people. You know, I just mentioned the two on Madison Avenue. You own your own floor. You take the elevator directly to your floor, right?
It's like townhouse ownership.
Of course.
With amenities.
Yeah, correct. And if you want multi-floors, I mean, I can't say much yet, but we just put a deal for a buyer that we put 4 floors for him together, right? And it will be out there soon. But, you know, so this is a typical, you know, townhouse buyer that wants to have all the amenities, doesn't want to have his own stuff, but has the building stuff to take care of whatever they need.
So, you know, we've been focusing on Manhattan when we're talking.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the boroughs.
okay?
Brooklyn's doing very, very well. Brooklyn actually performed incredibly well
Miki
even
even had to
during.
get a passport to go to Brooklyn. He's doing something now on Kent Avenue in
I-
Brooklyn.
just-
I
It's a small little project.
I actually developed few buildings in Brooklyn and own a few buildings in Brooklyn.
Yes.
But I like Brooklyn. But Brooklyn is so big, so
Yeah.
it depends where, right?
Yeah, but the Brooklyn market has performed really well during COVID. As Greg mentioned, there was a little bit of a flee out of Manhattan, but into Brooklyn, a little bit more space for your money. The Brooklyn market this past quarter surpassed the activity in 2020 and in 2019. It doubled.
The record number of apartment sales in Brooklyn this year so far. And that's amazing. And a lot has to do with the development that's gone on there in the last 50
Well, and the
Right,
quality
a lot-
of development.
a
I mean,
lot of-
you get the quality of product in Brooklyn now that you didn't see 10 and 15
That's
years ago,
correct.
right? You have great architecture, great designers. You have buildings that have incredible amenities. And buyers are attracted to that. Plus, the Brooklyn market, depending on where you are, unless you're in, prime Brooklyn Heights, is more of a $1,300 to $1,600 a square foot marketplace, where the Manhattan market, overall in new development, really still hovers around $2,000 a foot, give or take. So you have, for people who want to live in Brooklyn, for people who often, also work in Brooklyn, it's a great alternative to Manhattan. And Brooklyn has a lot to offer, right? I mean, Brooklyn has sports teams now. Brooklyn has great dining. Brooklyn has great amenities. And Brooklyn has always been a tremendous borough. In the last 10 years, it's seen tremendous development in the condo market that has helped to, enhance the entire marketplace, because that also helps the Queens marketplace, right? So the Queens marketplace gets buoyed by the Brooklyn marketplace, because the Queens marketplace is still a little bit of a discount to Brooklyn.
What about you in Queens? I know you have the large development on Kent Avenue in Brooklyn. Let's talk about Queens for a second. Any thoughts?
Well, I love Queens again. Queens is very big, so it depends where. We are.
I mean, Flushing, we had a large number of developments in Flushing,
Right.
Long Island City.
Right.
But I think there are different neighborhoods. Long Island City is a different
Exactly,
neighborhood.
completely different.
very
So
different.
look, we don't have anything right now in Queens, but we're definitely looking at opportunities. The biggest problem is to find the right, development site at a reasonable basis that you can build something. And from our point of view, we prefer, especially in Brooklyn and Queens, to build rental as much as we can. I mean, it's impossible to do it in Manhattan, but in Brooklyn and Queens, also very difficult. But here and there, you can find the opportunities. So not necessarily condo, but rental or a mix of rental and condos.
So now I'm going to talk about the borough that nobody talks about, Staten Island. Any thoughts?
Staten Island's interesting. It's seen a lot of development over the last couple of years. The problem with Staten Island in the past has been, unfortunately, the politicians on Staten Island really never wanted anything to happen, right? And I used to go to board meetings of the realtors on Staten Island who would complain about the fact that the politicians really just were not allowing development on Staten Island. But in the last couple of years, BFC's developed there. Some other developers have developed there. I think Staten Island's interesting, but it's kind of like an enclave. It's a borough of Manhattan, but it's really its own little neighborhood. And I think commuting is a little bit more difficult. Obviously, you have to take the ferry. I think you have a lot of buyers in Staten Island who, frankly, commute to New Jersey instead of into lower Manhattan. So it's a little bit of a different area. It's not for everybody.
Okay, let's get off Staten Island and let's talk about the Bronx.
We're going to need a boat.
The Bronx,
Gotta get a boat.
we've seen a lot of rentals.
Yes.
Inordinate number of rentals.
Well, you
open.
forget that borough, just like Manhattan, the majority of people that live there are renters. The heavy majority of people.
Or some co-ops.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
there aren't a lot of condos.
Right.
No.
But I see that as seeding the marketplace. The rentals are seeding the marketplace,
Yeah.
and then the condos will follow. There have been some condos built, but the majority have been rentals. But that has to seed the
has
market.
been a place where they've had some
Yeah,
condos.
and Riverdale's a little bit of a sleepy neighborhood,
it is
unfortunately,
because
because
it's
it's a co-op-driven
It's a
marketplace.
co-op. It's also a difficult commute.
It is.
Right.
It is.
But I think that as you see more hybrid work, programs and companies and more remote work being allowed, that's going to help the Riverdales and Staten Islands and Bronxes because people say, oh, if I'm only doing it 2 days a week,
Right.
you know, it's not so bad. If I have to do it 5 days a week, you know, I've had people who work for me who come from Staten Island and the Bronx, and they're miserable by the end of the week. It's a long commute on public transportation.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think the majority of the buyers that can afford, they much prefer to be in a location that they can walk and have everything that they want. So of course, you know, parts of Manhattan, you can't beat it. But in Brooklyn, there are also some parts of Brooklyn, in Williamsburg and other parts, that it's extremely convenient. So as long as they can do it, I mean, I agree, you walk, it's hybrid type of, you know, you can walk from wherever, from Staten Island or the Bronx, but it's a different type of you know, living. You don't really have the luxury of walking around and have everything that you want just near you.
Yeah, and that's been the draw of almost every new development that is doing well right now is basically in a walkable location to work.
Walkable, but also really residential
Really,
neighborhood.
right.
And not just like some type of a commercial neighborhood that someone decided to build a tower there.
Yeah, absolutely, agreed.
So, if I have to look at the apple over the last half an hour, it's even getting a little brighter. I mean, I need
It's
to
shining up.
shine it. It's shining up, and I think the world is getting better. And I think as Miki said, quality product is selling. That's not the question. Quality product in the right location by the right developer is doing well, and New York City is resolving and things are turning better. I'd like to thank Greg, our producer Stephen, and Miki, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.